your message was again, DP, to the member states within the African continent? What do you say? Making sure that they domesticate these guidelines so that, we don't see the post-election violence and just the responsible use of these platforms to avoid any sort of, just upheavals. Thank you.
Well, firstly, let me say that I'm very pleased that, the countries are here in big numbers. I think it's very important. So we have the election management bodies that are here, most of whom are having elections this year, counted more than 20. So it means it's a good platform, spending these 3 days sharing experiences on how we're going to socialize these principles and guidelines. All of you know that we're in a digital era now. So it's important that we capacitate and empower our EMBs as they manage these elections, particularly because, elections are always volatile. There are always sensitivities. As you go into election, people are talking about rigging or the elections will be rigged. So the credibility of elections are always critical, and therefore the EMBs must be well prepared to deal with the challenge. And I think with our IEC hosting this session to launch these guidelines and principles, for us is a step in the right direction at the right time, so that we are able to ensure that we can minimize accusations of rigging and so on. There'll always be people who want to make accusations, but if we are all well prepared, all EMBs in the continent, you can be guaranteed of, free and fair election throughout the continent.
Africa, what message do you have to your fellow politicians? Because social media, of course, is used by human beings. Thank you very much. By human beings who, of course, have their own agendas. We've already acknowledged that elections are a volatile and an emotional environment. The political maturity aspect, DP.
Well, I'm saying to my colleagues, politicians, let's be responsible. We know that there can be a lot of disinformation, misinformation on social media. So we are urging all the leaders to act responsibly to ensure that, the information that goes in is credible, because it's important that we must make people to continue to believe in our electoral processes, that they are indeed free and fair and giving everybody a chance. So let's fight disinformation. Let's ensure credibility at all times.
My name is Nyano from Place of Discussion. My question is, these guidelines of principles are guidelines. At what point are we going to have a situation where these are enforceable? Because guidelines may be followed, they may not be followed.
Well, as you have heard earlier, that all the election management bodies that are here have, in a sense, endorsed these guidelines by their presence here as we launched them. You heard the loud applause. So everybody says, yeah, this is the way to go. But remember, the EMBs don't come here without having rules and guidelines. So this is really reinforcing, because we're in we're in the digital era. So it's important that we factor that in. But most of these bodies are credible themselves, but they need to add these guidelines and ensure that they enforce them. Because if they don't, the credibility of the elections can be challenged. So we are hoping that everybody, as they live here, they will make sure that this is going to be done.
I need to also be direct, Nyana, and say that every one of us as electoral management bodies have powers that we derive from the law. In South Africa, for example, these guidelines may be used in part to add to the code of conduct. We prescribe that code when an election comes, and we can, in fact, use that process to enforce behavior on social media. It is evident that, the wars that we have seen on billboards, on, posters and things, have moved on to social media. And it is in that same way that we will regulate social media as we have done with posters and billboards. And we do think it provides every one of our electoral management bodies with an opportunity to move from where they are. Some countries will be more advanced than others, but we want to encourage everybody to catch up, and we want to move at speed together.
Thank you. And last question.
Thank you, Busi Chimambe, SABC News. Briefly, I just want to find out what the chairperson has spoken about the fact that EMBs need assistance to do their work from other institutions of society. So from a government point of view, what are the sort of things that you can do in this space to ensure that there isn't disinformation and misinformation? For instance, sometimes we have heard reports of government actually jamming the internet or basically making sure that people so in society cannot speak to each other at particular times, like during elections. So as government, what is it that you can do to ensure that it's used properly?
Well, as you had the the Minister of Finance recently, and when delivering the budget, also indicated that is allocating additional resources for elections, also to the security cluster, because they play a very important role, the national intelligence, the police, to make sure that we support the IEC to be able to deliver a credible election. So government will continue to play that role, making sure that when you go to voting station, people have access. In the rural areas, people are already complaining. In some areas, you don't have bridges for people to cross. In some areas, you don't have proper schools that can be used. So government will be there to give support, but also, these days we also deal with cyber security. We are very alive to that. So the security cluster is busy with those things in support of the IEC to make sure that the elections are credible.
I think it's important to add to that question, and it's an important question because we have worked together as electoral management bodies on the continent, but we had a strategic partner in the African Union Commission. We have had opportunities to brief our representatives in the Commission so that they take that message further to their different jurisdictions or countries. We are working on that issue. Even as we sit here, we will be looking at how best do individual individual countries look at their legislation and bring this part. There are parts of the continent where the matter must be lobbied at the highest levels of government to show what benefits this would bring. For example, social media makes communication absolutely easy and immediate. But when you fear, you lose that advantage. And so there are a number of initiatives we are taking to our governments. We have an easier job here because we've always worked on these issues together. But there are others that are joining, and we are helping them to do the same. It is not going to be immediate. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are determined this is something we have to pursue for the common good of all electoral management bodies, and most importantly, on our continent, for our continent.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Siyabonga. Great. Great.